So as we're leaving the oasis and the restaurant and everything, Crackler has an idea. As they're getting closer to the canal area, where they're going to be running into more humans. Crackler, has the insight that we got to take care of this ram because any of these humans see this ram, they're going to call the officials, and this might not be the best option because there's different factions within the human government that the crustaceans and the scorpions are more aware of than most of the humans, and so they're doing different operations, and they have to make sure that the wrong government officials don't get a hold of this ram for the agreements that Lee has, or the eel, Lee's twin, has gotten established with the crab people, so that there can be this new arrangement. It's emerging that we don't quite have the full picture of yet because we have these two parties going, one's going east, one's going north to figure it all out, and we've got this fourth ram that we've heard about that the government already has, that came out of one of the volcano tubes up north. And so Crackler has the idea, we gotta cover this up. So it's not a big deal. As they're leaving town, they find an old crustacean carcass, which, the crab people in this area anyways, they, many of them live a very long time, but because of all of these health enhancements that they're kind of carrying, growing on themselves, but many of them, because of their experimentations, these wild experiments that they do with themselves, they die, and they don't even bury them. They just kind of leave the empty shells outside of town. So there's all these old crab shells outside of town, and so our big lobster friend, Crackler, says, let's just get one of these lobster shells, or one of these crab shells, and we'll hide the ram in the crab shell, and we'll say it's there's weird crabs all over the place anyways, and so a crab walking around, hobbling around like a ram, as long as it looks weird, covered in barnacles and stuff, it shouldn't be an issue. So they do that. They get her suited up in this crab shell, and they head over to the canal region. And this is really getting to be fun now for Lee and John. They're like, okay, now we're going to meet some of these more of these northerners and see what they're like. So they're getting up closer there with Vestibula, who's the ram. She's in the crab suit, and they're getting up closer now to the canal people. Or again, there's this whole system of boats and everything. So they're getting up closer, and they're really excited because they see all this advanced technology, naval technology, moving through these advanced canal systems that they have, and they're fascinated. So they get up into them, and we'll get back to the canal people in a little while. Let's return now to so. Back in the desert, in the central area, we've got Raed is moving quickly now with Jake and Mercurial and the Hawk, and they're moving east quickly, and they're getting closer and closer, and there's going to be a small mountain range that they're going to have to cross. And Raed starts talking to Jake. Says, so you know how this whole system works here, because it's getting to be close to be dawn, like it is here now, and it's getting close to being dawn, and Raed is explaining to John what they've been through in the desert at night together, and says, you look up at the sky right now before the sun comes up, and says, you see that big bright star up there in the center of the sky? Yeah. And we call that the East Star, because when we were back at the main mark point, it's called main mark point because at the equinoxes, that point, when you're there at that oasis in that central desert, the East Star, and there's another bright star that's on the western horizon, in the middle of the night at midnight on either of the equinoxes, those two stars are balancing each other on the horizons, and so that gives them that sense with the seasons with their geography, with where they are on the planet and where they are in time. And then he points up and he says, you see that set of stars over there that looks, like a body of an animal, and then with an archer on top, a human archer on top of this. Says, yeah. And he says, you see that bright star that's kind of off, but kind of near it, but kind of off of the arrow there. Yeah. And he says, okay, so that constellation, we call that Sagittarius, and then that's the archer there, that is a centaur archer. And then that bright one there that's off of the bow, that's a planet. That's in your local solar system here. It's in our local solar system. And that's Jupiter. And that Jupiter right now, it's apparent motion. If you look at it day to day, it's actually moving the opposite direction that it normally would through the sky, because that's the apparent motion of it as we are synchronizing with how we rotate around the sun on this planet in relation to it. And so sometimes it looks like it's moving backwards because of where it is at in relation to the sun. And Jake is learning this stuff about the stars and everything. Is wondering why is Riot talking about the stars here as it's coming up, but he's following along. And so Riot continues, and she's saying, we're gonna, I left word with the peacock back there at the volcano to call back into action now, because I understand why. Because when Jupiter is moving this retrograde view through Sagittarius, it means that these wise, knowing creatures and beings are going to be reveling in what they already know in a sort of backwards way, but that is still propelling the journey along for us here within this inside of our view of ourselves within the planet and everything unfolding. And John is sort of like wondering, or Jake is wondering, what has Riot hasn't led him astray in any way yet so far, but is wondering what does this connection have to do with anything. And so Riot continues and explaining that, so your new friend Unisare, she is an ancient creature, and she's here because she couldn't fly away to this place where she comes from, which is actually her ancient ancestors came from that region with the arrow, the archer guy, that centaur. And she is more tuned into any of this without even needing to know what's going on, without needing to know the details. She just knows what's going on. That's why she was already ahead of us. Well, we're gonna need her up here, is what Ja's telling me. Is that we're she's wanted for this coordination with the Goat King for something to do with all of the exchanges that we have happening. So she's she can cover ground quickly, which is why I let her have her time having fun there at the Oasis doing the party thing. And but I left word with the peacock that we should be expecting her. So we're gonna take a power nap when we get up to those mountains before we go across, and then expect to meet up with Unisare. So getting this update, and Jake is getting increasingly fascinated by this whole thing and is really falling in love with this path of knowledge and accumulation of information, but also this wisdom that comes with applying that knowledge during the journey with all the experiences that they're having. So Jake is really, and Riot are sort of getting this deeper and deeper bond of falling in love with this journey together. And then so they're getting up closer into the mountains, and they set up camp, and they just crash out, and they each have some of the red mushrooms, so they'll be well energized when they awaken. Meanwhile, dawn is up, and this is just sort of taking this nap at dawn, and back at the canals. Back there at the canals, the people are approaching the canals, right? Lee and the hawk, comes back and says, "Okay, um, we found these, the proper government officials here. We identified them and located them for the handoff. Lee is not, or Eel is not with them. Eel is going to meet up, over on the East Coast." With that party, and so Lee is like, "What the heck? Okay, well, at least I've got this blue stuff. I gotta." And he's eaten some of it, and he started eating some of this blue stingray venom stuff that's gonna get him in deeper psychic connection there. And so they get into the canal area, and the hawk leads them over there, and there's two crab people, and one of the and then a large machine that's at the end of one of the docks on one of these boats, and says this machine has this ability to translate the crab language, and the Crackler gets this handoff with them, and gets them on this boat with these two crab people, and this big machine, and they hop on the boat at the end of the dock, and they start going down the canal, and they head east.